XCN has bottomed out at 0.004. This is NC Crypto. My name is Neil, keeping technical analysis short and sweet. And in this video, I will explain the technical analysis behind XCN. If you have not seen the previous video or the ones prior to that, definitely go ahead, watch this video for 60 seconds, then go check those out. Due to the algorithm, I need people to be watching for 60 seconds apparently. To start pushing this to more people, because there's not a whole bunch of information that is new from the previous video to this one about XCN. But let's start with Bitcoin. As always, Bitcoin is starting to build its base, as we've been talking about. We got this bottom here, we got a second bottom here, we are breaking a downward trend line. All of this is looking good. The 200 EMA is getting a little bit closer. CM Guppy is thinning out. We could easily see Bitcoin push back up to the 94, get a little resistance, but we need it to close above these previous highs right here to start seeing that continuation up to 100K. However, everything is looking good. In my last video, I explained about the news behind everything on TradingView. I did put a reference link for TradingView in my description below. If you use that, you get $15 off your first subscription. I think it's like $60 a month, but you can use more indicators and you don't have ads and stuff like that. But Bitcoin is starting to build up. We do need it to close above this previous high to start seeing the opportunity to get a close above this previous high. So the CM Guppy is really thin. And the main thing to keep in mind here is the RSI. We are building higher lows. We are testing support off this yellow line and starting to push up into the overbought, which is ideal to start seeing this reversal. Moving on to XCN. Let's see what new information I can give you compared to the last video. For the people who just stick here on this channel for XCN, definitely please go look at the other videos, because we're not just looking at XCN in the market of what it's going to be doing. The rest of the market really can influence and show you what the potential is for a coin like XCN. Some people are staking. I'm holding off on staking because we've seen in the past major increases in price. I've had bad experiences with staking before. If you are a member, you see one of my videos called One of My Biggest Life Lessons. Lost 100K by staking on a platform one time. So that's not fun to talk about, but it definitely helped me learn. Granted, XCN staking can be beneficial, but I'm kind of avoiding it until we get this pop and drop and go down, hold it on top. So we are looking at the CM Guppy. It is thinning out. This red line I have pasted here is kind of where we can expect the CM Guppy to be forming. If we see this blue line and we get that liquidity sweep, we would most likely pull right back up into this downward red trend line and then start our continuation, as the CM Guppy would be dropping and we would pull right back up, making it extremely thin, not very strong resistance, and thinning out a lot easier. Whatever may happen, whether it drops and does the liquidity sweep or just has a nice consolidation, this CM Guppy is getting weaker and weaker as the days go on and is not having that major resistance like we've seen back here and clearly back here in September, where we had that continuation downwards. With all that being said, this video is mainly on XCN. I'm going to cover a few other coins later in it, just to kind of cover all bases. I don't want to do another video. I spend like 3 hours doing these things every day, about a month, 24 hours a day for a month and a week. I've been posting videos and am finally monetized. So shout out to everybody who's been following along. But XCN is at 0.0043. Not saying this is the bottom, even though that is the clickbait title. We could see a lower low of 0.003. It all really depends on if Bitcoin is going to hold this as support or if it is going to have that quick retracement, potentially downwards. But right now, it's looking pretty bullish in my opinion. Everything's kind of playing out very nicely. My iPad is lagging out by switching back and forth. This is terrible. Absolutely terrible. All right, so XCN. we have the red lines as the downward wedge. Typically when you see this wedge, it's more of a bullish formation. It has to have these type of retracements coming downwards and then testing some support before ultimately pushing back up. More than likely getting a little bit of resistance off the 200 EMA and this red downward trend line. But as you see, it's starting to curve and level out with this blue line that I have pasted here. This is the true CM guppy right at this point. This blue line is my make-believe line for where we might see this play out. If Bitcoin starts to pull up, we can see major exponential moves for altcoins in general. And we've seen in the past, like right here, back here in January, a little bit of volume, but keeping in mind we were holding above the CM guppy for November to roughly January. So we held for an entire month. We could be waiting out all of January to get this consolidating. We could see a quick move up above the 200 EMA and see that consolidation. But with that consolidation over the 200 EMA, we could expect a further move up. And typically when you have a major move up or a breaking of a downward trend line, you see it break, have a pretty nice pop, and then you usually see it come back, retrace, and test it as support before taking off to the upside. The inverse head and shoulders I have placed here could be irrelevant, could be accurate. We don't know yet. We need the data to see that play out. So say we break this red downward trend line. The people who are trapped, whether you be at 0.16, 0.23, or even higher, I do have high faith that we are going to be seeing this 5 cent mark again, whether it be very quickly or a slow consolidated period. We will be getting back up there. The real question is, how long are you willing to hold on? Or are you willing to scalp with me? So me, as a scalp trader, I like to be in and out. If you've seen my Tornado Cash, we've made over 200% on Tornado Cash while the rest of the market is bleeding out. If you don't know what scalping is, I mean, you should. People buy, Beyonce tickets for $500. Probably not. They probably spend more than that. Say they bought a Beyonce ticket for $1,000. They'll sell it to you for $2,000 the day of. That is a scalp. So say, for example, we push way up here to 3.2 and you bought in at 0.004. You sell off and wait for that re-entry, that pullback, whatever far back it may be. Could be all the way back down to a penny. And then you buy back in. It goes up back to 4 or 3.2. You sell off again. Everybody else does. It comes back down. That is scalping. I guess a better version to explain would be essentially this back here in January. So going back in January, just this wick, say you had your entry right here at 0.003. The next day it goes all the way up to 0.016. May not seem like much, but if we do the percentage ratio on that, that is 342% gain. Pretty nice scalp. One day gaining 335%. Say you bought an apple and you sold it the next day for almost 3.5 times the amount that you paid for it. And just like everybody else, it wicks off and comes all the way back down to, what is that? 0.008. From 0.016 to 0.008, when you look at the percentage difference, that's nearly 50% decrease in price in the same day you had a 350% gain. So that's pretty substantial. You sell that apple for 3.5 times your profit, and then you rebuy the same apple, and then it continues up again. You scalp again the next day, and it comes right back down. That is essentially scalping. For everybody who's been trapped in XCN, however, I guess I'm just making this video for XCN. I don't have enough time to put in other coins, but I will make a video for members, probably on silver or XPR, not XRP. For the people who are entering in here, you would be looking for a scalp trade potentially at 0.008, selling off, waiting for a re-entry, because the real possibility is 0.009. That is quite a bit big of a difference in profit ratio if you do hold out past that 200 EMA and sell off up here, but you have to keep an eye on the chart. So then it has that retracement potentially down underneath the 200 EMA, consolidates, and then has the ability to push back up over that. You sell off at 0.01, get that re-entry on the tap, and then you're working from this price point. But if you're buying in at 0.008 and it does not hold, you are risking that entire way down, which makes your profit probability a lot more risky than just holding on to it from this price range. For the people who have been trading, you guys know this. For the people who are new, I guess that's a majority of the people watching the channel. This is kind of the way the market works. Buying in and holding is very nice, especially in the altcoin season. Just wait it out till you see for sure peaking out and then sell off. For me, I like to play the game. Every day is like the Super Bowl. So maybe you make 350% within a day and then you sell off, watching it drain itself within that same day. And you say, you know what? Looks like it's building a little support. I'm going to buy back in. Yes, you are buying in at a higher price, but you also made that major 300% gain, and then you're buying it at 50% off yet again because you know that it's going to have that continuation. For our exit strategy, for my exit strategy, none of this is financial advice. Once we get over this red downward trend line, and that holds as support, you would want to be looking at the Fibonacci retracement depending on where the base is. Say the fib base, let's get the fib here. Say this is bottomed out here. Right here is where the fib is. The first real major resistance is here at 0.01472. Pretty substantial increase. Dropping a zero is massive with these half a penny investments. But if we get that resistance, you would still be looking at the support off that red downward trend line or potentially this 0.01. Why the 0.01? Because going back in previous history, that's where we had some support. That's where we had some resistance back in April, but very little resistance because we just blasted through that. So say we blast through this red line on the fib. The next real resistance is essentially the 0.02122 because on Fibonacci retracement, the golden ratio that plays out within markets, within life itself, do some research on the golden ratio. It's in everything. Sumo wrestling, for example, is a golden ratio. If you haven't seen Freakonomics, definitely check that movie out. It's pretty good. But we have some major sell-off potential here around the 0.09 or 0.019 or the 0.021. This is because we've had some major resistance back here, which lines up perfectly with the Fibonacci retracement. But typically what we've seen in cryptocurrency is the 618, this orange box in my fib. Over here you can see 618 right there. That is the typical retracement for a Fibonacci level. Excuse me. With that retracement, you are more than likely to see some major resistance and major pullbacks from the 0.032. So everybody who's trapped in at 0.016 or higher, you would most likely want to be doing a scalp or sell-off around 0.032. I'm not saying that that's the best sell-off. It really depends on the data because we've seen major increases in price back here in January. So we did have that major push up to 0.016, major retracement back down to 50% off, followed by the continuation up to 0.048, which is absolutely phenomenal. It was around 2,000+% gain within a couple of weeks. And that's still possible with XCN here in the upcoming months. We could see that rejection on the 0.618, where some people may be selling off, waiting to get in a better entry, even if it's back at their original entry out 0.016 or higher. Anything below that is still going to be a phenomenal entry because 0.049, roughly 5 cents, is the major resistance. And we'll more than likely see a little bit of rejection like we saw back in January where you could see a 50% decrease in price, which would be putting you all the way back here, more or less at 0.025. Roughly this fib, the green line here at the 0.5 retracement. So say we hit the 0.5, get that major retracement, you have the opportunity to enter back in at around 2.5 cents, and that's still a phenomenal entry because the data shows beyond that on this chart, the all-time high is 18 cents. In this chart, we're looking at 10 cents. 618 is at 0.065, which means if, say, we break the 0.05 cent mark, then the next real resistance we'd be looking at is only at 0.065 due to the fib retracement from the previous really actual high. 0.065 isn't a whole big difference from 0.05. I know it's a penny. It's not a whole bunch. What is that? Let's figure it out. Say you're like, I'm going to wait till it breaks 5 cents. You're only looking at about 33% increase in price buying at that price point. If you are stacking your bag at 0.004, you're definitely making quite a bit bigger difference in your profit ratio. Let's use it one more time. One more time. Let's go. Come on. Oh no, I'm lagging. All right, so say we're getting in, let's do it a little bit higher, 0.00476, and you ride that wave up to the 5 cents, you're looking at 1,000%. Say you hold on and you get that 1,273% as opposed to waiting for it to do its retracement. It pulls right back up to that 5 cents and continues. You're maybe looking at that 33 to 50% increase as opposed to buying at this price point and getting 1,273%. You only need 10x, 10 times to become a millionaire. With, say, what, $1,000, I think? Something like that. So if you put in $1,000 at this price, you're looking at 12x with that one trade. But say we're looking for the all-time high, which is right around here. That is 37x. 10x, 10 times, there's 37x. So not bad risk to reward. That is what a lot of this is based on, is risk to reward ratio, or at least my strategy is. Everybody's got their own strategy. Risk to reward is the best thing to be looking at. I would have never entered into XCN if I did not see the risk to reward at this point. This is when I first pulled up this chart, just digging through a couple cryptos, and my first entry was right here because the CM guppy was thinned out to the max. October 31st, more or less, of 2023. It's been 2 years. We're going on to the 3rd year, but it's been nothing but profit since the original entry because of probability. Probability is key. Probability, if you don't know what it is it probably might go up, probably could, because we had this waterfall effect. Probably it could go from what, 0.000, I think I got it at 125, all the way up back to the previous real resistance right around the 618, which is 0.065 cents. Probably could. It probably could hit that, but we hit a little bit lower at the 0.05 essentially. So the probability of it going from 0.000125 to 0.06 had a pretty good probability. It went up to nearly that price point, but we hit a little bit lower at 0.0 roughly 5 cents. So now we are back at 0.00438. Probably we could be hitting from 0.00438 to 0.031. It's a high probability. Probably we could go down to 0.003. That's a probability, but it's less of a probability than the upside. When bears are selling, they only have the absolute 0 to be going to, roughly here. That's their probability. However, as a bull, because we're not a bear, we're not a dancing bear, we'd probably make more money being dancing bears, but the probability is definitely more in our favor to the upside in this chart. When we go into XCN on a different chart on crypto.com, this video is getting pretty long, so my iPad's starting to lag. In crypto.com, it's 18 cents. We'll just go with that. Oh, now you pull up. Now you pull up. Now you go away. 50% of all donation stickers and all that good stuff goes to saving animals' lives. The other 50% will be going to getting new tech to give you non-laggy information. And like, subscribe, donate, tell your friends, tell people who don't know how to trade. NC Hammer is where it's at. NC Hammer is where you're going to get some good news. No FOMO, just technical analysis information. So 18 cents, the 618 is at 11 cents. The probability of hitting 11 cents, there's a very high probability of that. Very, very high probability of hitting the 11 cent mark. Everybody asked me, what do you think the real maxing price is going to be? Personally, I think 42 cents is where we're going to max out at. But there's a higher probability that we're going to get some strong resistance here around the 10 to the 11 cent mark, where you're going to have a bunch of sell-off. You could have something like this liquidity sweep that happened back in June of 2022. But even if people sell off and it does do something like that, that is one day where it has a major liquidity sweep. You could sell off at 11 cents, put in a buy stop somewhere down here around 2 cents. It snag it that same day and then rip right back up. And with that scalp trade selling in around 10 cents, say you enter in at 0.0165, that is another 576% potential on top of the thousands of percent that you have made on the way up. So you're just stacking and stacking with those scalp trades. For those of you who want to learn more about scalping, become a member, whether it be on Patreon or YouTube, and I will take your request into consideration, walk you through my strategy, my processes, and you guys donating also helps save animals' lives and gives me more motivation to continue what I'm doing. But on this chart, we see that we broke a downward trend line, which is major. We crossed over a second downward trend line, this yellow one right here. We are consolidating over that. CM Guppy's getting thinned out. We are oversold in the RSI. 200 EMA is starting to line up with this black downward trend line, which is the last real resistance we have. Everything is looking very nice for XCN, even if we have a liquidity sweep. So that's kind of it for this video. Like, subscribe, donate if you want, and good luck. Have fun with it. I will see you on the next one.